I never imagined that a few plastic skeletons and some orange string lights would lead to the most spectacular downfall of an HOA president in suburban history. But then again, I never imagined someone like Karen Westbrook would become my neighbor either. It started innocently enough. My wife and I moved into Meadowbrook Estates in late September, drawn by the tree-lined streets and well-maintained homes. The neighborhood seemed perfect, quiet, and family-friendly with just enough character to feel welcoming. We were excited to celebrate our first Halloween there, especially since our old apartment complex had barely tolerated a single jack-o'-lantern on the doorstep. This year, we planned to go all out. By mid-October, our front yard had transformed into a tasteful Halloween display. Nothing too scary, just whimsical. A family of skeleton musicians sat around an illuminated pumpkin patch. Purple and orange lights wrapped around our fence posts. A fog machine created atmosphere on our porch, where an animatronic, which stirred her cauldron. Neighborhood kids would stop on their way home from school to admire it, and several neighbors complimented our creativity. It was exactly the wholesome seasonal fun we had hoped for. That is, until I met Karen. Before we continue with this absolutely wild story, if you are enjoying the content, please hit that like button and subscribe to Karen Eat World. Trust me, you will not want to miss how this situation unfolds. Your support helps us bring you more unbelievable tales of HOA madness and petty revenge. Now, back to Karen's spectacular mistake. The first time Karen appeared at my door, she wore a cream-colored blazer with the HOA logo embroidered on the pocket, as if she were the general of some suburban army. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her perpetual frown into something almost painful to look at. She held a clipboard, naturally clutched against her chest like a shield. Good afternoon. I am Karen Westbrook, president of the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. I need to discuss your yard decorations. I smiled politely, assuming this was a friendly welcome visit. Oh, hi. Are they okay? I made sure nothing extended past our property line. Her eyes narrowed. The HOA bylaws clearly state that seasonal decorations may not be displayed more than 2 weeks before the holiday and must be removed within 48 hours after. You put these up on October 1st. That is 2 weeks and 6 days before Halloween. You are in violation. I blinked, processing this absurdity. You are upset that I decorated 16 days before Halloween instead of 14? Rules exist for a reason. I am issuing you a warning. If the decorations are not removed immediately, you will face a $50 per day fine starting tomorrow. She handed me a formal notice printed on HOA letterhead and turned on her heel before I could respond. My wife Sarah and I laughed it off that evening. Surely Karen was just having a bad day. We reduced our display slightly, taking down some of the perimeter decorations to show good faith, but kept the main elements. It was Halloween season, after all. What kind of neighborhood bans Halloween decorations? The next morning, I discovered Karen was not bluffing. A violation notice was zip-tied to our mailbox, officially documenting our fine of $50 for October 17th and October 18th. The notice claimed we still had excessive decorations and were creating a public nuisance. I decided to try the reasonable approach. I looked up the HOA bylaws myself and found the decoration clause. It was vague, mentioning that decorations should be reasonable and temporary, with a suggested 2-week window. Suggested, not required. Nothing in the actual governing documents supported Karen's interpretation. Armed with this information, I attended the next HOA meeting. The meeting took place in the community clubhouse, a generic room with folding tables and uncomfortable chairs. About 15 residents attended, most looking bored. Karen sat at the head table with 2 other board members, who seemed to defer to her completely. When the floor opened for resident comments, I raised my hand. I would like to discuss the decoration policy, I began calmly. I have reviewed our actual governing documents, and they do not support the interpretation that was used to fine me. The bylaws say decorations should be reasonable, which mine are, and suggest a 2-week window, but do not mandate it. Karen's face flushed. The board has the authority to interpret and enforce the bylaws as we see fit. Your decorations are excessive and violate the spirit of our community standards. My decorations are similar to several other houses in the neighborhood, I countered. In fact, the Johnsons on Maple Street have had their decorations up since late September. This is not about other residents. This is about your flagrant disregard for community rules. Karen's voice had risen to a sharp pitch. If you do not like our standards, perhaps Meadowbrook Estates is not the right fit for you. A few residents shifted uncomfortably. One older gentleman tried to suggest that maybe the rules could use clarification, but Karen shut him down immediately. The meeting adjourned with nothing resolved. My fine stood. I paid it, nearly $700 for 2 weeks of Karen's petty tyranny, and removed my decorations entirely the next day. It was not worth the fight. Or so I thought. Halloween came and went. Sarah and I handed out candy from our bare front porch, embarrassed when kids asked what happened to our cool decorations. Several neighbors quietly told us they thought Karen had gone too far. One woman mentioned that Karen had been on a power trip for the past year, ever since she became president. Apparently, I was just the latest target in a long campaign of petty enforcement actions. November arrived, and I assumed my troubles with Karen were over. I was wrong. On November 2nd, I woke to find my decorations, which I had neatly boxed and stored beside our garage, were missing. All of them. The skeleton musicians, the witch, the fog machine, the lights, everything. Easily $1,500 worth of decorations, just gone. At first, I thought maybe someone had stolen them during the night, a random theft. But then I checked our security camera. The footage was crystal clear. At 2:17 a.m. on November 2nd, Karen's white SUV pulled into my driveway. Karen herself, wearing dark clothes and moving quickly, loaded box after box into her vehicle. She made 3 trips, cleaning out everything. The camera captured her face perfectly under our motion-activated lights. She even paused at one point to look directly at the camera, apparently not realizing it was recording, before continuing her theft. I sat in my home office, watching the footage 3 times, a smile slowly spreading across my face. Karen had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She had no idea who she was dealing with. You see, I had not been entirely forthcoming about my background when we moved to Meadowbrook Estates. Sarah and I valued our privacy, and I had recently retired young after selling my tech security company for a substantial sum. I maintained consulting relationships with several law firms, and still had connections throughout the legal and security industries. I also had a somewhat obsessive personality when it came to documentation and evidence. Some might call it paranoid. I called it prepared. Within an hour, I had the security footage backed up to 3 separate cloud services, downloaded to an encrypted drive, and copied to a thumb drive I placed in our safety deposit box. I documented everything, timestamps, a detailed inventory of the stolen items with receipts and photos, and a frame-by-frame analysis of Karen's theft. Then I called a lawyer friend of mine. Marcus Chen had been my corporate attorney during the sale of my company. He was sharp, ruthless when necessary, and had a particular appreciation for irony. When I sent him the footage, he called me back within minutes, laughing. "She stole your Halloween decorations?" The HOA president committed burglary over Halloween decorations? Every moment captured in 4K video, I confirmed. What are my options? Realistically, you could file a police report for theft. With this evidence, she would probably be charged. But given the value and the clear footage, you might have a bigger opportunity here. Let me make some calls. While Marcus worked his legal magic, I did some research of my own. I started with a deep dive into Karen's background. Public records showed she and her husband owned their home in Meadowbrook Estates, a nice property valued at around $600,000. Her husband worked in middle management at an insurance company. Karen was a stay-at-home mom with 2 teenage kids, who seemed to treat the HOA presidency as her personal fiefdom. But then I found something interesting. Karen's house had a second mortgage, taken out just 8 months ago. And there were 2 liens filed against the property, one from a contractor for unpaid work and another from a credit card company. Karen and her husband were drowning in debt. Suddenly, her rigid control over the neighborhood made more sense. When your personal life is chaos, controlling your surroundings becomes an obsession. I dug deeper. The HOA finances were technically public to homeowners, so I requested the records. What I found was alarming. Karen had been using her position to direct contracts to specific companies, likely getting kickbacks. The neighborhood landscaping contract had tripled in price under her watch, going to her brother-in-law's company. She had pushed through a beautification assessment that added $200 to everyone's annual fees, money that seemed to vanish into vaguely described consulting services. Karen was not just petty. She was corrupt. And now she was a thief with her crime documented in perfect high-definition video. Marcus called me back that evening. I talked to a prosecutor friend in the district attorney's office. With the video evidence you have, they would definitely pursue charges: burglary, theft, potentially criminal trespass. Given the value of the items and the premeditated nature captured on video, she is looking at possible felony charges. But here is where it gets interesting. I'm listening. She is an HOA president, meaning she is a fiduciary with responsibilities to the homeowners. If you can document any misuse of HOA funds or abuse of her position, you could potentially sue her personally and the HOA. But I have a better idea. Have you considered buying her house? I paused. What do you mean? They are in financial trouble. You have evidence of a crime. If charges are filed, she will need money for legal defense, possibly criminal fines, and her reputation will be destroyed. They will likely be desperate to sell. You could buy the property, potentially at a significant discount, and then, well, you would own the house next to your primary target for HOA enforcement. The beautiful irony of it hit me immediately. Karen had stolen my decorations because she hated them being in her neighborhood. What if I owned her house and turned it into a permanent Halloween display? The ultimate revenge, completely legal, and using her own financial desperation against her. Marcus, you are a genius. Let's do it. But first, let's make sure Karen understands exactly what she has done. On November 5th, a police detective showed up at Karen's door. I know this because several neighbors witnessed it, and word spread quickly. The detective presented her with the security footage and a warrant for her arrest for felony theft. Apparently, Karen tried to deny everything at first, claiming the footage was fake or that I had given her permission. Neither argument held water. She was arrested, handcuffed in front of her neighbors, and taken to the county jail for processing. The neighborhood Facebook group exploded. Some people defended Karen, claiming this was an overreaction to a simple misunderstanding. But most were shocked that their HOA president was a thief. Several homeowners started asking questions about the HOA finances and Karen's other enforcement actions. The trickle of doubt became a flood of scrutiny. Karen made bail, but the damage was done. Criminal charges meant legal fees. Her lawyer probably told her the same thing Marcus had told me. The evidence was ironclad. She was facing a felony conviction, possible jail time, and certain financial ruin. She needed money fast. 2 weeks after her arrest, a "for sale" sign appeared in Karen's yard. The listing price was $575,000, about $25,000 below market value. They were desperate. I waited a week, letting them sweat, before I made my move. I did not use my own name. I had Marcus set up a limited liability company called Autumn Celebration Properties LLC. We made an offer through the LLC, $475,000, all cash, closing in 2 weeks. It was a lowball offer, a full $100,000 below asking, but with their financial situation and criminal charges pending, they had little choice. They countered at $500,000. We agreed. The beautiful part was that Karen had no idea who was buying her house. The LLC was registered in another state, and all communications went through Marcus. As far as Karen knew, some random investor was taking advantage of her situation. She would not learn the truth until closing day. Meanwhile, I had been busy. I contacted every Halloween decoration supplier within 200 miles. I bought animatronics, elaborate tombstone sets, professional-grade lighting systems, fog machines, projection systems, sound equipment, everything. I spent over $30,000 on decorations alone. Then I hired a stage designer who typically worked on haunted attractions to create a permanent installation plan. The day of the closing arrived. Marcus and I sat in the title company's conference room when Karen and her husband walked in. The moment she saw me, her face went white. What are you doing here?" "I am the buyer," I said calmly. "Autumn Celebration Properties LLC. That is my company. I am buying your house." Her husband looked confused, glancing between us. You can't." "Actually, I can. And I have. The sale is final as of today." I slid the signed documents across the table. "You should also know that I plan to turn your former home into a permanent Halloween attraction. Year-round decorations, professional displays, the works. All completely legal, of course. I have already verified with the county that there are no ordinances against it. And as for the HOA, I smiled. Well, the bylaws say decorations should be reasonable and temporary. I think 12 months is a reasonable length of time for seasonal celebration. And it is only temporary if you measure on a long enough timeline." Karen's face cycled through shock, rage, and horror. "You cannot do this. The HOA will." "The HOA will what? Find me like you find me? Except now I have evidence of your corruption, your theft, and your abuse of power. In fact, I have already provided documentation to several other homeowners who are preparing to file a lawsuit to remove you from the board and audit the HOA finances. By this time next month, you will not even be the president anymore. This is insane. You are doing this because of Halloween decorations?" "No," I corrected her. "I am doing this because you broke into my property and stole $1,500 worth of my belongings. You committed a crime, Karen. And then you were arrogant enough to think you would get away with it. The Halloween decorations are just the theme of your downfall." Her lawyer tried to interject, suggesting we could negotiate, but there was nothing to negotiate. The sale was complete. I owned her house. Karen sat frozen in her chair, finally understanding the full scope of what I had done. She had stolen my Halloween decorations to punish me for not following her petty rules. Now I owned her house and planned to turn it into the most elaborately decorated property in the entire county, a permanent monument to her own overreach and criminality. As we stood to leave, I turned back to her one final time. "Oh, and Karen, every October 31st, I am going to throw the biggest Halloween party this neighborhood has ever seen. Right in your old front yard. You are welcome to come, but somehow I doubt you will want to. Consider it a yearly reminder of what happens when you let petty power go to your head." Karen's mouth opened and closed, no words coming out, her face a mask of pure shock as she realized that her crusade against Halloween decorations had not only gotten her arrested and forced her from her home, but had resulted in the very thing she feared most, an excessive, permanent, over-the-top Halloween display that she would have to witness every single day for the rest of her time in Meadowbrook Estates, unless she left the neighborhood entirely. If you enjoyed Karen's spectacular downfall, please give this video a like and subscribe to Karen Eat World for more unbelievable stories of HOA nightmares, petty revenge, and entitled people getting exactly what they deserve. Drop a comment letting me know what decoration you think I should add to the house next. Thanks for watching, and remember, never mess with someone's Halloween decorations. You never know who you are dealing with.